This video is brought to you by
Auckland Photographer's Clothing.
In this lesson we talk about the A mode or AV mode, depending what camera brand you are using. It's a half automatic mode and it's pretty useful. You can use often times, but I personally don't use many automatic modes. I mainly use the manual mode and sometimes I use ISO auto. I will explain later what that means, but most of the times only manual mode. But you can choose whatever option you want. You have the possibilities in your camera and that's what I want to show you in this lesson. So let's switch directly into A mode. And it does not mean auto mode or something, it's the aperture priority mode or AV, aperture value mode. With Canon cameras, for example, it's called AV. But here on the Sony, it's A, just A. And when I set this mode, you can now set manually the aperture because it's called aperture priority. The aperture has the priority. I can now choose, I want that nice bokeh-licious, blurry background and foreground here for that beautiful flower that I photographed before here on that tripod. And you set that in the camera because you don't want the camera to choose an ugly, let's call it ugly aperture. I want the f1.8 and I set it in the camera and now the camera makes the rest. So the camera says now the light is changing, 1/2000th of a second of shutter speed, bam, image taken. And now the light is changing, the sun is maybe behind the tree, there's a shadow on the flower, on the person you want to photograph, and you just click the shutter and the camera does the rest. But the aperture always has priority, it stands on f1.8, it does not change, but the shutter speed changes. What actually the camera does, it plays the zero game, it always exposes now on 0, but only with the shutter speed, and the aperture always stays fixed at the value that you set. That's why it's called AV, aperture value, or aperture priority. And you can make, of course, an adjustment. You can make it a bit brighter and a bit darker as well, because sometimes you don't want to play the 0 game, but the +1 game, or +0.5, or +2 game, or minus whatever game, and you can make that compensation as well. Just with the auto mode, I already explained it. You click on the ± square here on the bottom, and then you maybe set it on +1. And now every image is +1 overexposed. And here in this case now I just hit the shutter, f1.8 stays, but the image is slightly overexposed now, a bit brighter, and the shutter is adjusted. And when the light is changing, it will always adjust the shutter speed, and that can be quite helpful. But that's only one situation. Let's go to another situation. I'm back here at my shell at the shady rock here. A lot of birds pooped on that rock. Not the most beautiful rock, but the other rocks are in the sun and we need a shady place to demonstrate what the problem sometimes can be with the AV or A mode. So I will now change my aperture to f10. So the aperture is a little bit closed now, in the middle range you can say, and usually I would say in landscape photography and in many genres, you try to use the middle range. So not max open, not maxed closed. Most lenses get the best image quality out of the middle range. And now f10 is somewhere in the middle range. The shell is in focus now, and I take the photo, and my shutter speed is now at a 30th of a second. Everything's set by the camera, it's A mode. The camera is intelligent now and gives me the value that it thinks is best to expose on 0. It played the 0 game. So where is the bad thing about it? Well, there should be an alarm in your head when the shutter speed is below your focal length. And in this case, my focal length is 55 millimeters. And when you want to photograph handheld and don't get a blurry image, and the subject or object you're photographing is not moving, you self can move because of your hand shaking. Even though you breathe in or breathe out and you hold very stable, or you try at least to hold very stable, your focal length dictates you what shutter speed you can use.
This is a great jacket system for outdoor photography. I'm Albert Ross, professional landscape photographer, and this is my Hochland Parker Pro jacket. This red color is my personal signature edition. It has multiple layers, not just this layer. It has a fleece layer, a mid layer, and this outer layer. It's very waterproof, it's windproof, and it's suitable for any kind of weather conditions. Anyone can wear it, but it's a jacket system aimed at photographers, meaning it has some very nice features like this little pocket with my lens cloth attached here. I can quickly take it out for my glasses or my lens or my filters. Then it has really big pockets here for accessories, and it has a lot of nice pockets inside for batteries, smartphone, SD cards. It's very convenient for me as a photographer to use, not only because of the weather, but also because of all these nice features.
Now on sale, discontinued and off-season items up to 60% off at www.hochland.us.
Hochland. Photographer's clothing.
There are some modern things like image stabilization and maybe sensor stabilization, and that can help, it can compensate a little bit, but when you want to be super sure, best thing is to always not go under your focal length in shutter speed. What that means is when you have, let's say, a 50mm lens, don't go below a 50th of a second shutter speed. Better even to double it. So 50mm, 1/100th of a second shutter speed, handheld. When you have a 100mm lens, 1/100th of a second, better double, 2/100ths of a second minimum shutter speed. Some modern cameras can calculate that by itself. They don't go below a certain number that you don't get a shaky image, but most cameras don't do. So you have to think with the camera, and that is a bad thing in auto mode because you don't want to think in auto mode. That sometimes is a disadvantage in the auto mode. There's a quite helpful tool in this camera here, for example. You can look if it's in your camera as well. It tells me now that image stabilizer is off. This camera has not even an image stabilizer, and the lens does not have one as well. And if it's the same with your camera, then it's very important to take care of that rule of thumb with the shutter speed, that you don't get a shaky image. And here in this situation, it even gives you an exclamation mark and starts flashing when your shutter speed is too slow to shoot handheld. So now with the 30s of a second, f10, or now it even tells me 20s of a second, it can happen that the image gets slightly blurry. And you want to avoid that. So always keep that in mind when you shoot in an auto mode. You also can compensate that with some cameras when you have ISO auto activated, because with Sony cameras it's not set on standard. You can activate ISO auto. Now ISO is on auto, and now it tells me f10 and 1/100th of a second. That is much safer, and it adjusted the ISO a little bit. But in general, always keep in mind, when you shoot auto, look always for your shutter speed, because it can happen that especially when you have a value or priority on the aperture, that your shutter speed gets too slow when it's too dark. Or imagine to be in the evening, not only in the shadow area, but in the evening, or you want to photograph at night with AV mode handheld, it will not photograph or will not work that well. Actually, you can use it very good for portraits or for situations when you always want to have a nice open aperture, that nice bokeh-licious look, that blurriness in the back or foreground. Then just put your camera on A, the shutter speed will get calculated automatic. If you want an extra automatic, put on ISO auto as well. I have a whole lesson about that later. But be always aware of the shutter speed when it's in a darker area, like inside a shadowy place, or also in the evening, or when you want to photograph at night. And actually, a smartphone always photographs in A mode, because in a smartphone the aperture usually is fixed, and depending what lens you are using, you have a different aperture. And then the camera itself calculates the shutter speed and the ISO number. So with a smartphone, usually you photograph in that A mode. But with a camera, you can set the aperture, you can tweak the aperture, and in that A mode, you can just set it and the rest does the camera automatic. So is an automatic or half automatic mode a bad thing? No, it's not. You won't get an award to always photograph manual. Use your settings clever, depending on what situation you have, but always be aware of the downsides maybe an automatic mode or half automatic mode has. Like in this example here with maybe a too slow off shutter speed. But in general, it's a great thing to have that option. My exercise for you is to try out that mode, that A mode with your camera, and try it in different scenarios. With an open aperture, a maxed open aperture, beautiful flower, maybe walk around and take just some different shots in different areas of light, in a shadow area, in a sunny area. Maybe also use that compensation to make it a bit brighter, a bit darker, and then go in a shadow area or maybe an inside area where it's a lot darker, and then try to close the aperture and see what your camera does. If you get a shaky image handheld, or if you can use the ISO auto mode, for example, in that mode as well. Or maybe your camera calculates ISO auto by default. That can happen as well, depending what camera brand you're using. Again, it's important that you know how your camera works and that you know how my camera works. All right, I wish you a lot of fun and see you in the next lesson. This video from my beginner's course Simply Learn Photography from 2023 is part of my photography legacy. Over a period of 5 years, I will publish my courses from learnfromben.com for free and with ads here on YouTube. So everyone can benefit from my knowledge regardless of budget. So subscribe now to the channel and spread the word. And do you want all 9 courses from the last 10 years immediately bundled together and without advertisement at a super affordable price? Then go now to learnfromben.com and get the XXL Bundle as an instant download or stream via the website at www.learnfromben.com. More than 22 hours of the finest learning content on photography, filming and image editing in all levels of skill. Links in the description and in the comments below. And also check out the sales section with my signature tripods and D-filters and books. Everything is on sale up to 60% off, as long as stocks last. Thank you for your support. Videos from the courses are published every Friday at 5:30 p.m. German time. My name is Jaworskyj and I wish you all some really good photos.